So let's move right into our next roundtable and welcome our participants who are all connecting in today. We have online Roberto Viola, the Director General of DG Connect. Oh, we have everybody there. So Thomas Renaud, CEO of Iliad, Richard MARKO, the CEO of ESET, and Jean-Marc Arion, the CEO of Play. So turning to you now, Richard MARKO, major crises, as history always teaches us, tend to be really unforgiving teachers. And obviously the situation in Ukraine is on a completely different level. What lessons is the war teaching us about cybersecurity today?
Well, we have to realize that there are actually two wars, or maybe more, but two wars being fought at the same time. So one directly on the field, the other one in cyber domain. And this war didn't start during this year, but it actually started earlier, most importantly in 2014. So since then, Ukraine was perhaps the most challenging cyber security area in the whole world, and some of the biggest cyber security threats for Ukraine, but also for other parts of the world. Remember, for example, NotPetya, the biggest ransomware attack that was affecting the whole world. It all originated in Ukraine. Now, ESET is the largest cybersecurity vendor in Ukraine, so we are directly in this battlefield. And the invasion started in February 24, but in the evening of February 23, we noticed that there is a big cyber attack going on in Ukraine, and we published a news. Then a couple of hours later, the whole invasion started. And this hasn't ended back then. So we saw several waves of large cybersecurity attacks on Ukraine since then. And so it is our work, and of course of anybody who is trying to help Ukraine in this fight, to help to secure the Ukrainian IT infrastructure in different ways. The whole economy is heavily affected by the crisis. We see around 30% decline in the overall IT activity in Ukraine since then. But we, from our side, are trying to provide as much help as possible, extending the licenses that we are providing to the customers there, providing free upgrades to the most sophisticated solutions and so on. So I guess there are different ways that we can do, but this cybersecurity field is one of the big battlefields of the war in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. And like you said, it's hard work, so we really wish you the best with all of that. Maybe we could hear about your company's contribution. Richard, I know that you guys are also helping Ukraine in the digital sphere. You mentioned the mission of your company, but maybe you could give us a little bit more details about the support you're providing in digital to Ukraine.
Well, the support is providing directly the equipment and the software, the solutions. This is being done according to the needs that are there. But really, we need to realize that we are providing security solutions to both households and small and medium businesses, and also the big enterprise businesses. So I would say the thing that is really significant is cooperation and coordination of these efforts with the local authorities and local experts like CERT, Ukraine. And this is the way to uncover the attacks as soon as possible. We need to realize that the attacks are directly on critical infrastructure like power stations. So it's not only about shelling that we sometimes see in television, but the cyber attacks going in parallel or usually preceding such attacks. And so we need to keep track and an eye on what is going on, because these attacks are related. Usually one is used to help the next wave and so on. The latest wave that was directly against the power stations was, I believe, in April, and it was actually prevented. So there was not a direct blackout as a consequence of this, which was very, very big achievement, I would say, of the teams in Ukraine and our teams. Then, of course, there is all the help that we do, just like many other companies. Several of our offices are located close to Ukrainian border, so then this is the work of volunteers, and some of them taking the families fleeing from Ukraine to their own houses and apartments.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, and thank you to all of our panelists. Good work on preventing that last blackout. How the tech industry can help Ukraine during and after the war. So for that, let's welcome on stage our panelists. We have Gulsana Mamedieva, the Director General of the Directorate of European Integration in the Ministry for Digital Transformation for Ukraine. Jacek Kubas, the Director of the Digital Hub, EBRD. Jakob Greiner, Vice President of European Affairs, Deutsche Telekom. Andrew Lee, the Director of Government Affairs for ESET. And we also have a number of panelists online. So turning to you now, Andrew, it's something that I found really fascinating in our CEO panel with Richard saying that it's almost like there's two wars going on. There's the physical war, but there's also the cyber war. And it can also be sort of give clues as to what's going to be attacked next, because they've had incidents just before physical attacks. This is sort of our first full-scale cyber war that we're seeing in Europe. What do you think we can learn from it to be better protected in the future? Are there specific actions from the private or the public sector that we need to take into account?
I think that's right. It is probably the first, at least publicly, major cyber war. However, if we look back to Estonia in 2007, they did suffer very large-scale cyber attacks, and since that moment, then developed the skills that were needed. And Estonia really now is a world leader in cybersecurity. So. And as Richard said at the beginning of his first intervention, Ukraine has been under attack since before 2014. Actually, around 2013, we started to see the rise, and then through the years, prior to, of course, the troubles that were happening already in Donbass region, there were major blackouts in 2016. There were major blackouts in 2015, and ongoing there has been activity of certainly Russian-speaking actors in Ukraine causing disruption, causing destruction, and trying to undermine critical national infrastructure. And that has brought us to this situation now where actually, as Richard said, some things are able to be prevented, and this is really a credit to the skills that the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian IT people, have built themselves. It's important to remember that we are not simply the great saviors marching into Ukraine and delivering our wonderful expertise, but we are really partnering with what expertise there is on the ground already, and we have a tremendous amount to learn from what Ukraine has done. And to answer your question about what can we learn from Ukraine in Europe, it is exactly that: to invest heavily into cyber resilience, invest heavily into the IT sector. The IT sector in Ukraine, prior to, of course, the invasion in February, in the last year, grew around 36%. It's a tremendous amount of growth and a tremendous amount of opportunity and a huge amount of skill that is being driven by the fact that they are under attack. And so perhaps Europe can learn, without having to be under this direct attack, that we also should invest in digital skills. We should also invest in platforms that are resilient, that are well audited, that are properly interoperable. And we should have these kind of agreements to partner with each other as European members and as hopefully future European members to work together to actually create a digitally resilient situation for all of us.
Thank you so much. There's a number of things I want to come back to. I'd like to circle back now to Andrew. So what needs to be done to strengthen cybersecurity? And if you know the answer, what can we learn from Ukraine?
I think there are probably many answers to that, but I'll try to be very simple. You know, we're very focused on the current situation, and rightly so. You know, Ukraine is under attack. There has been a completely outrageous invasion of their territory, not only in terms of their land, but in terms of their cyber territory, the autonomy of them to run and to run their own infrastructure and to run their own systems. And this is something which, as cybersecurity companies, you know, we take extremely seriously. We protect these, you know, digital worlds, as it were. So, but we also should remember that in the wider world, there is an ongoing cyber conflict, and there are groups around, adversarial groups around the rest of the world, who are also now turning their attention to Europe. They're turning their attention in some cases to Ukraine. And these are also forces with, you know, interests in the cyber realm, but also perhaps in the long-term planning. We're talking about, you know, how can we plan for the future? What can we do once peacetime comes? And I hope, you know, every day that will be very soon. But what can we do then to rebuild Ukrainian infrastructure and so on? But there will be other agencies and other countries looking to also perhaps offer their services in rebuilding those things. But what does that come with? What does that introduce? And we can look at perhaps Africa as an example of what's being built there, in the way that debt is leveraged, in the way that capital is provided, and in the way that infrastructure is provided, which perhaps doesn't necessarily match with the aspirations of a country that wants to come to a democratic relationship within Europe. So we have to consider the cyber realm as part of this. And so what can we do is, I think there is a great need not only for better partnership between the private sector and the government sector in cybersecurity. That has increased tremendously since February and has been increasing over the years. But I also have to give credit to companies that we've partnered with, companies like Microsoft, companies like the telecoms industry, but also agencies like Digital Europe, where they've been able to coordinate these large-scale efforts for bringing together expertise, not just equipment and money, but expertise on how we can tackle these things. And I think cyber in Europe is far stronger than perhaps people even realize that it is. And this is something that we don't necessarily only need to rely on the outside. And so Europe can focus its public-private partnerships perhaps on what do we already have here in Europe, including in Ukraine, the skills that's already available, and the kind of the uniqueness of our offering, of what we have, of the skills we have, our position in the world geographically, economically, and from a cyber threat intelligence point of view, how we're installed, what we can see, the telemetry that we're able to gain by where we are. As Richard said, we're the largest supplier in Ukraine of cybersecurity solutions. So we have a completely unique view, which is only possible because of these kind of collaborative approaches. So I think cyber threat intelligence is a really big, important part, and continued kind of building of these trust relationships between government and the private sector, which are not only about commercial realities, but about real partnering on providing expertise and how do we grow together and how do we protect what we've built here in Europe.
Thank you so much. So we're going to keep moving on because time is pressing. Andrew, what would you like to leave us with really quickly?
Yeah, I think it's very important to think about the future, of course, and this is something that we should do, and we should think about how are we going to make sure that as we see the world transforming because of digitization, that it transforms us in a way that we would like, and that in the way that our citizens will be have their privacy protected, that their security, physical and digital, protected, and that we can use digital transformation to improve the lives of citizens, and without thinking about how we invest in the cybersecurity fundamentals that underpin everything that we do in digital technology, I think that aim will be much harder to achieve. So I would very much encourage all of us to think about and it's not about buying a product and forgetting about it. Cybersecurity practice is a practice. It's something that evolves and it moves. But to think about the fundamentals of how we design systems, how we integrate systems, how we work with each other across borders, so that incidents like NotPetya doesn't take down half of the world because of one country being targeted. These are all important questions, and that they must all be answered by, I think it must be answered by us in let's say, digital democracies as well, so that these technologies are used for the benefit of citizens. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you so much.